Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl, 'cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins #1. Yes, we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins #1.
Time now for Dolphins Central. Here's Thomas Galicia.
2, down, sit, hut, hut, hut. Can't touch us. Can't touch.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 3 of Dolphins Central Podcast on the Pro Football Central Podcast Network. I'm your host, Thomas Galicia of BleacherReport.com, and today we're going to keep it in the Bleacher Report family with our guest, Erik Frenz, who's not only the AFC's blogger for Bleacher Report, but also talks about the AFCs for Boston.com. So let's get started as I introduce this week's first guest, Erik Frenz. Thanks for joining us on the program, Erik. First things first, how do Miami's moves look from behind enemy lines?
Well, the Dolphins, to be honest with you, I mean, the big story with them, it's how much money they spent this offseason, and really people are kind of just curious if the free agency frenzy is going to work, because really the past history of big spending in free agency is really not very good for the teams that do it. You just look at the Eagles, who did a similar free agency spending frenzy a couple of years ago, and now they're kind of set back to square one. And you look at last year, the Buffalo Bills, they went out and spent a bunch of money on the defensive side of the ball and didn't really have immediate success. Now, will the Dolphins immediately be successful? I think that's kind of the question everybody's wondering. And if you look at the positions that they went after in free agency, they made the right decisions in terms of where they went and how they addressed their needs. Again, it's just a matter of getting everybody on the same page really quickly, getting everybody into the game plan, and getting everybody familiar with the system.
Huh. That's true. I think a lot of the success will have to do with how well Ryan Tannehill progresses this season compared to last season. How would you see him progressing this year compared to last year?
I really like Ryan Tannehill's skill set. It's interesting because, the big thing everybody's going to talk about until he does otherwise is the fact that he threw more interceptions and touchdowns last year. That's kind of the big thing. And really, obviously when you look at the whole picture, you want your quarterback to be a little bit more careful with the football than that. But there were some long stretches during last season where he looked very good, and there were 2 4-game stretches where he didn't throw a single pick. So I think, if he can take those flashes and turn them into a consistency, then I think definitely he could be, he could definitely move himself into the top half of NFL quarterbacks. He has that talent. Again, it's just a matter of him really kind of immersing himself in the playbook and getting up to speed with everything. The one thing that really kind of impressed me the most about Tannehill was how he performed under pressure. And I think that, with the kind of the questions around the Dolphins' offensive line, that's definitely going to be something he's going to be asked to do a little bit next season. So, if he comes out and he looks comfortable, I think they'll be all right. But if he looks like he hasn't really taken much of a step forward since his rookie season, then I think the Dolphins will struggle.
Very true. We do still have some trust issues with Jonathan Martin for obvious reasons, as I'm pretty sure you saw last season.
Yeah.
But even despite this, is it pretty safe to say that the Dolphins are at the very least the second best team in the AFC East?
Oh, absolutely. I think, when you look at just the direction that the Bills and the Jets are headed, they are kind of both taking steps backwards. And the Bills, kind of had to hit the reset button this season with the quarterback, the head coach, even the general manager. And the Jets, they're kind of in an interesting situation where, they're sort of transitioning everything. They transitioned their offensive coordinator. They're looking to move to the next quarterback, and obviously the general manager has changed. And you wonder, how much job security Rex Ryan has. I think personally, they should keep him around, but it's one of those things where, the Jets had such high expectations for such a long time that, they can't necessarily keep waiting around for Rex Ryan to prove that he's a championship coach. So I think that they have some of the pieces in place, and both of them, I think, could be heading in the right direction at some point. But right now, the Dolphins, I think, are definitely ahead of the game in terms of those three teams.
And how would you see the AFC East shaking out this year, record-wise and standings-wise?
Yeah, I think the Patriots are going to be the top team in the AFC East, but their record, I think, will be somewhere around 12-4, at worst 11-5. But I think the Dolphins could hope for 10-6, but I think they're around a 9-7 playoff team. I do think they're a playoff team. I think one of the AFC North teams is going to take a step back this year, probably the Ravens, just because they've lost so many players. And, I think that opens up a spot for the Dolphins to sneak into the wild card. And then the Bills and the Jets, I see them still kind of struggling. But it's interesting because, it's really hard to count any team out of it entirely. And when you look at the way that teams have been so instantly successful with the new quarterback and head coach tandems. You look at Mike Smith and Matt Ryan in Atlanta. You look at John Harbaugh and Joe Flacco in Baltimore. Across the league, there are examples of it. Chuck Pagano and Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. So those new quarterback head coach combos do have a tendency to work out quickly, even in situations where it looks like they might be rebuilding for a while. So again, I put the Bills and the Jets in the basement, but with the caveat that, they could take some people by surprise for sure.
Sounds interesting. I never really thought of the Bills as a sleeper team, but it seems like it could work, and I really loved what E.J. Manuel did at Florida State.
Well, the thing with Buffalo, when I look at them, is just, I mentioned at the top of the podcast that they spent a lot of money defensively, and, obviously it didn't work out quite like they had hoped it would immediately. But I think when you look at just schematically last year, they were not doing enough to help the players. And, it sounds very strange when you say it like that, but Dave Longstead's defensive scheme was very vanilla. It was constant cover two. They had a mix of man and zone coverages in the back, but nothing too exotic in their coverage schemes. And then up front, it was pretty much just a straight four-man rush. Very rarely did they blitz anybody. So I think it's interesting that, with so much athletic talent on that side of the ball, you look at that defensive line, the two Williamses, Mario and Kyle, and you have Mark Anderson on the edge, and obviously Marcel Darius, defensive tackle. They have some athletic bodies up front, and then they have some guys in the back that are pretty versatile as well. You look at this defense, they could be 3-4, 4-3 kind of scheme versatile, and they'll definitely dial up some pressures to get after the quarterback this year. They're not going to be the same old vanilla Bills defense. It's Mike Pettin runs a pretty complex scheme. So if those players can get a grasp of the scheme, then I think they'll be pretty good. They'll take some people by surprise on defense at least.
No, the Dave Longstead vanilla defense, we know that all too well. It always worked in September and October, but by November, teams had it figured out.
Well, hey, at least it worked in September and October for you guys, because it didn't work in September and October for the Bills.
Very true. Very true. But Longstead is a Dolphins coach to actually sweep the Patriots. And it's been we're going on 4 years since the Dolphins were even able to win a game against the Patriots. This season, what chances would you give the Dolphins of at least taking the one game from the Patriots? I'm not even going to go out on a limb and try to fake sweep.
Yeah, they could definitely win a game. They always play the Patriots tough, and I know you guys are probably sick of hearing that, but it's true because the Patriots, they don't always get into close games. Like, they steamroll a lot of opponents. So the fact that the Dolphins are so consistently able to play close is a good sign. And then you just take a couple of bad bounces in any of those close games, and who knows how it turns out. I mean, last year you could point specifically at Ryan Tannehill's missed deep throw to Brian Hartline, which could have been a touchdown, where Hartline was streaking right past Aqib Talib, and Tannehill just overthrew it, just put too much air under it, and otherwise it would have been a touchdown. And you know, obviously in a one-score game, you know, a play like that can make all the difference. So you know, anything like that, I think, you know, the Dolphins have a chance certainly of taking down the Patriots in at least one of those games.
Well, another thing I'm looking at actually when you compare the two teams is the Dolphins have a new look secondary. They got rid of Sean Smith, and in comes Brent Grimes, and they've drafted a couple of corners. And the Patriots wide receiving core is also fairly young, fairly unproven. How would you compare the two going into the season?
You mean the Dolphins cornerbacks against the Patriots receivers?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously you're only going to get that head-to-head matchup twice in the season, but I think there's certainly elements of uncertainty in both units, and it's interesting because now that you mention it, you know, you're looking at the top dog that got brought in free agency on each unit. You know, the Brent Grimes has injury concerns, and Danny Amendola also has injury concerns. So I think a large part of their success is going to be tied to whether those guys can stay healthy. For the Patriots, I think it runs a little bit deeper than that, obviously, because Julian Edelman has so many injury concerns as well. And then, you know, you kind of even go a little bit deeper. I would consider the Patriots tight ends to be wide receivers. They're running patterns just as often as they're blocking. So you know, I would say with those guys, there's injury concerns there as well. But the Patriots and the Dolphins both actually brought in a couple of rookies at those positions. The Dolphins bringing in Jamar Taylor and Will Davis, and the Patriots bringing in Josh Boyce and Aaron Dobson. So you know, they got a good mix, I think, of guys in both cases that, you know, can do a mix of different things. They're pretty versatile. I think with Josh Boyce and Aaron Dobson, you have a really good XY combination. You know, Aaron Dobson's going to line up on the outside pretty consistently, and Josh Boyce is probably going to man the slot for at least the beginning until maybe he gets a little bit more well versed. But don't underrate his ability to get outside the numbers too, because I mean he's a pretty short guy, but he's very thick built. He's built like a brick, so it's pretty hard to get a jam on him, and you put him on the outside, it could be tough for a defense, and he's very fast too. So and I think with Will Davis and Jamar Taylor, you know, you have a mix there where I think it's another case where Taylor is a little bit better maybe on the outside, and Will Davis would probably be better in the slot. So it'll be interesting because I think, you know, you'll see both units be under a microscope this year, but in both cases, I think, you know, it was smart for those teams to move in a different direction. You know, just kind of schematically speaking, I think with Kevin Coyle's defense, you know, they're going to want guys who can do a little bit more than just straight up line up against your man and cover him, like, you know, they had with Vontae Davis and Sean Smith. And then with the Patriots, you know, they want to get a little bit more explosive. They don't want to be the dink and dunk offense anymore. So they kind of had to take a few shots at the board to see if they could change and they could head in the direction that they want to. And it'll be interesting to see if it works out for them.
Yeah, they definitely need to have a more explosive defense this year in terms of turnovers. And that leads to my final question, and that's with the new acquisitions, including first-round draft pick Deion Jordan. I expect the Dolphins to increase their turnovers, but how much of an effect do you think Deion Jordan will have in terms of creating turnovers for the Dolphins defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's kind of hard to project, you know, how that will work out. I just it's because, you know, with Jordan, you know, you wonder, is he going to be a consistent 4-3 defensive end, or is he going to, you know, kind of move around a little bit? I think it was Alex Miglio who actually wrote a really good piece kind of detailing all the different things that Deion Jordan can do and how he kind of opens it all up for the defense. So I think, you know, if you put him on the other side of Cameron Wake, there could be some that increases your opportunity to create disruption in the passing game, especially if they're both rushing the passer on a consistent basis. But I do think that, you know, obviously turnovers were a big problem area for the Dolphins last year, and so were explosive plays. They gave up 60 pass plays of 20 yards or more, and that was, I think, the fourth most in the NFL last year. So, you know, obviously giving up big plays in the passing game is not a death knell. I mean, the Patriots had the same problem last year. Actually, I think they gave up more big pass plays than any other team in the league last year, and they were in the AFC Championship game. So, if you give up big plays, you can still have a good team, but you definitely, you want to make a defense earn, or you want to make an offense earn their yards and not give it away on big plays. So I think, at the very least, Deion Jordan will help in that area. Creating a little bit more pressure, I think, will be a huge help for the Dolphins defense, just not allowing quarterbacks to sit back and pick them apart on a play-to-play basis. And when you look at what that defense is going to be able to do, it's just a matter of kind of creating more pressure off the edge, and really, even up the middle, I think a little bit they could use some more pressure. And it's interesting that they're working out Jared Odrick at defensive tackle. I know that's kind of out of necessity more than them trying to experiment, with Randy Starks being out at OTAs, then that kind of opens up that hole there. And Odrick has that skill set. I think Dolphins fans for a while have been kind of waiting for them to try him out a little bit more at defensive tackle. So definitely, if they can get more pressure on the quarterback, that should help everything out for sure.
I know. We've been waiting for Odrick on the interior of the line, and I actually think that one's going to work pretty well. And as to the Patriots allowing so many big plays on defense, when you have Tom Brady to match those big plays on offense, he could be a little bit more forgiving of them, obviously, than at least the Dolphins last season. This season looks like it could be different. So thanks for joining, Eric. Thanks for joining us, Eric. Great talking to you. Great having you as a guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I definitely look forward to doing it again sometime. It's always good talking about Dolphins football. So, and Dolphins fans tend to be, a little bit underrated in their passion for their team. So definitely looking forward to do it again sometime.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onit.com, ONNIT.com/football radio.
Once again, our thanks to Erik Frenz for appearing on the podcast. You can read Erik Frenz's work at BleacherReport.com and at Boston.com. Now, this is going to be a short podcast because Erik was our only guest this week. We're talking about the entire AFC East. Why bring anyone else on, right? Anyways, just to go over some notes. My latest article has been posted to Bleacher Report. It was posted on Tuesday, so check that out. You can check that out on my Twitter feed. Also, come Friday, I'll be posting a very interesting article about the top 5 scandals and controversies in Miami Dolphins history. That should be a very interesting look down memory lane. Also, really no significant Dolphins news to really talk about other than the signing of fullback Evan Rodriguez from the Chicago Bears. Rodriguez has had a very troubled offseason, to say the least. So that's a bit weird, but at the same time, he's really competing for a very crowded position with the likes of Charles Clay and Worski Lane. So it could be, a little flyer that the Dolphins are taking at a position that's already somewhat strong, but it could always be stronger. The team could always be stronger. Well, we will be back next week with more exciting Dolphins talk. Hopefully I'll be in a better mood when I'm giving the intro and the outro next week due to the heat. I don't want to talk about what happened Tuesday night. For Dolphins Central, I'm your host, Thomas Galicia. Be sure to follow me at Thomas Galicia. That's spelled Galicia. Also, if you have any questions, if you have any comments about the podcast, be sure to follow us at Dolphins Central on Twitter. And if you have any questions, be sure to send them to us so that we can answer it. I don't know why I said us, because I'm the only one that's hosting the show. So once again, I thank you to Erik Frenz, and thank you for listening, and we will see you next week, same time, same podcast network.
See me right out of the sunset on your 'cause I'm